All right, guys. Well, we are joined back with HDNet commentator and the Voice versus host, Michael the Voice Schiavello. How's it going?
Hey, guys. Fantastic. Thank you. Great to be back on the show. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, we've been looking forward to it, man. I know we were crunched for time last time you were on the show, so it's going to be nice to have you for a little bit longer because you're one of our favorite guests on the show, I'll tell you right now.
Oh, man, thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be back on the show with you guys.
All right, now, last time we talked to you, we discussed a little bit with how you got involved in commentating and how your career started. So my first question was, how has your passion for commentating died at all? Has it increased? Has it been the same? How has it been throughout your career? Because you've just transformed yourself into this huge figure that's on all of these shows. Are you still able to keep that passion that you had when you first started?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, you know, the strange thing is, or maybe it's not strange, is that my passion continues to build for commentating rather than decrease. You know, even doing smaller shows, like this weekend I'm up here in New Mexico, we're doing King of the Cage, which is a much smaller show than, you know, Dream or Sengoku or K1 or any of those ones. But I'm so super excited for tomorrow night. I'm just chomping at the bit to get there, get in front of the camera, get on the microphone and do the commentary. I guess because I'm really a perfectionist who loves his job and loves the whole experience of making an event out of the commentary, making it into an art form. So whereas you can get as much entertainment and information and knowledge through the commentary as you will just watching the fights alone. So I always look back at the last show that I did, and I always do a self-critique on the last show and wonder, well, how can I do it better the next show? And it's like in a lot of things, you know, I suppose in the game you're only as good as your last show. So I sort of look back at the last one and I think, wow, I can do things so much differently on the next one. And no doubt I'll look at King of the Cage next week after having done it tomorrow night. And before I do Sengoku next weekend to Japan, I'll go, wow, okay, how can I improve on what I did at King of the Cage last week? So when you're looking to constantly improve yourself, you know, that sort of, it's that passion, that excitement that you always want to up the ante and you always want to raise the bar and you always want to keep doing better than you were last time.
Now, you talk about improving on your commentating and always critiquing yourself, and you're a guy that's known for always bringing the great one-liners. I mean, people know you for that. You just crack guys up. So when you're commentating and you're thinking about what you want to do for your next show, do you ever have to stop yourself and go, hey, maybe this might be over the top? Have you ever had that situation come up when you were debating on, you know, saying one of your one-liners that maybe you thought would just be too much?
Not particularly, because I don't actually sit there and meditate on one-liners, and you know I don't sit there by myself and put a pen and pad in front of myself and say, okay, I'm going to come up with a list of 10 one-liners. You know, most of them, they happen off the top of your head, and they happen with the spontaneity of the show, and it's just thankfully something I've been blessed with, is that ability to be that spontaneous and that quick-witted to be able to come up with those one-liners. So, you know, it's more so a spontaneous thing. And when you're acting with spontaneity, as you guys know, doing your own radio show, it's very hard to self-edit. If you're going live, it's extremely hard to self-edit. And even if we do events that aren't live, which is very rare, I mean, in the year and a bit that I've been with HDNet, we've only ever done 2 shows in the studio that... 3 shows in the studio, 2 of them of which haven't been live. And even then, I do them as live. I don't get the editor or the producer to stop and, you know, redo it if I think I've made a mistake. It's just like, well, I want to give that feeling of live, that feeling of spontaneity. So, no, I never really find myself backtracking or questioning myself or checking myself. It's just... Yeah, it's just one of those things, just one of those talents that I'm thankful to have, that I can bring up these one-liners during a show. The only trick is, like, not to get worn out on some of them. Yeah, there's some of them that I think to myself, well, you know, I used that one a few times in a row. Maybe I should pull back on it. And there's a couple of more that I think, well, you know, I'd like to use that one. I haven't used it for years, and the US audience wouldn't have heard that one. And, you know, I've used it in Australia maybe 8 or 9 years ago, and it got a good reaction back then. I want to throw it on US TV now. And, of course, there's always the new material that I try and, you know, come through with on every show. And, again, it comes down to spontaneity too, because there's a little sort of, I guess, a checker in your mind that says, hey, well, you've done that one before. Quickly throw a curveball out here and come up with something else, come up with another analogy. It's all part of the fun, and I like that's one of the things that separates me from a lot of other commentators and keeps it fresh and keeps it innovative and unique. I think that's one of the more appealing things about the commentary.
Now, with HDNet, you just mentioned the small shows a second ago. I was wondering what's your favorite small show that you've been able to do, and what's maybe a small show that you're really looking forward to do but you haven't had the chance to commentate yet?
The one that I really enjoy, they're all good, from MFC, although Mark Pavlich would be a little peeved if I call his show a smaller show. But look, I'm saying small in comparison to a Dream or a Sengoku or small in comparison to a UFC or a Strikeforce. I would say, though, there's a promotion in Florida run by a promoter called John Prisco. It's called XFC, and we commentate these from the St. Pete Times Forum, which is maybe the best arena I've commentated in America. It's an ice hockey arena. It holds about 15,000 people at capacity. They cut it down to about 8,000 for XFC. John Prisco is marvelous to work with. He's a gentleman. He's got his shit together. He gets it. He understands the game. He understands the television involvement and the media. He understands how to build fighters from a very low-tier level into building up his own stars and not really just trying to poach former UFC stars or former Ultimate Fighter stars or anything like that. Most of the guys he uses are guys that he is breeding from the very bottom level up. And, I'm a big fan of his. I think he's a brilliant matchmaker. And I would really like to see HDNet continue to get behind him and get behind his shows and, give XFC an even bigger platform to do their thing in 2011. As for do you mean the big shows I haven't commentated or the small shows that I haven't commentated that I like to?
The small shows that you haven't commentated.
That's a hard one because living in Australia, I don't get to see a lot of the smaller shows that are around the US. So that's difficult for me to comment on. I mean, Shark Fights are putting together some nice fights. They're putting together some good stuff. That'd be pretty cool to commentate. Some of those Tachi Palace fights, sometimes I see their cards and I've seen some highlights and they look pretty decent. But yeah, as far as small shows go, it's just difficult for me to comment. Living in Australia, we don't get access or exposure to any of the smaller regional shows in the US. So that's a really, really tough one.
Now, talking about promotions, and a lot of these guys, the up-and-comers, they'll try to get the old UFC stars and bring them in, and we've seen a couple guys doing that. Actually, Shark Fights is doing that on their next card, although they have been around for a while, but we've seen some of these other cards that have tried to do that, and they've just fallen flat. I believe there was a card in Australia not too long ago that came underneath a lot of heat because they didn't pay their fighters. So if you could play promoter for just 1 second, what would be the best way, in your mind, to go about starting an up-and-coming promotion?
Starting an up-and-coming promotion, you've got to get talent from the ground level and build it, and you cannot overshoot your sights. I mean, you look at Impact FC. That's the show you're talking about in Australia, and there's been all these contentious issues about them not paying fighters, and they got a horrible crowd. I don't think their pay-per-view did very well at all. There was even an issue. They wanted me to commentate, and then there was a big whole brouhaha, and it was just a complete mess. A lot of unprofessionalism and people pointing the blame at each other. Impact FC came and they said they were going to be around for a while and they were going to do these epically big shows. But the thing is, they didn't build anyone from a ground level. And you're flying in guys like Paulo Filho and Dennis Kang, and, you wanted to fly, people like Bob Sapp. Well, these aren't people who are going to sell tickets in Australia. Even a Josh Barnett. No one in Australia knows who Josh Barnett is unless you are a heavy-duty UFC fan and you remember Josh from his UFC days. It's just a different level of association with MMA in Australia. So when they were flying out people like Josh Barnett and Geronimo Dos Santos and Ken Shamrock, people like me who are hardcore MMA fans, like, whoa, okay, cool. We get to see some of these, legendary names in action. But for the majority of people, and even your generally interested MMA people that were fans of the UFC and fans of the Ultimate Fighter, they are not going to know who Geronimo Dos Santos is. They're not going to know who Josh Barnett or Dennis Kang or Paulo Filho is. So they made a big mistake there. If I was going to play promoter and I was going to start up-and-coming shows, I wouldn't start in an arena that holds 10,000. I would start at a local arena that maybe holds 1,000 tops. I would go to the local MMA gyms and maybe a couple of interstate MMA gyms and match my local guys, build my own pool of talent, get them on semi-long-term contracts, and then then build them and go from a 1,000-seater to a 1,500-seater in 6 months' time. And then if I build it from a 1,500-seater, go to a 2,000-seater and try and get myself a television deal, a small television deal. And then eventually, in 3-4 years' time.
All right, guys, usually I say just go to joeshowradio.com to check out the rest of the interview, but really, go to joeshowradio.com to check out the rest of the interview with Michael Schiavello. This is a 76-minute long interview, so go to joeshowradio.com if you want to hear the rest.